Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday edition, the special edition of Spurs Diehards TTID. I know a number of you will know Sean coming through from his channel. Well done. Thank you, Adrian. Well done. But I'll introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. I'm Ian Meth, and I'm going to host tonight's show along with my co-founder and co-presenter in the top right of your screen, Adrian. So good evening, Adrian.
Evening all. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this show.
Underneath the good-looking one at the bottom of the screen, many of you will know. Yeah, no, it's the good-looking one behind you.
Bugsy, she's there.
Is Sean Butler. I've asked Sean to come on because Sean obviously has a lot of corporate experience, and we want to talk about we want to talk about the ownership and the ownership issues. Sean has got about an hour and a quarter, so we're going to rattle through what we want. Other than one thing I do want to say is this is not, I repeat, not a Levy out show. It's not got an agenda in respect to the current owners. It's simply a factual show talking about who the owners are, where they are, where we are as a club, and what the future might hold going forward. About 90 of you in watching so far. I suspect a fair number of you already subscribed to Sean's show. Excuse me. But if you can press a like and subscribe to our show, that will really help us. We're a new channel, and we would absolutely love to have you on board with us. So please,
yeah, guys, it's quickly, guys, it's over on the Spurs Talk Show. Make sure I put the link in the title. You got to spread the love here. Adrian, part of the furniture on the Spurs Talk Show. Ian, less so, but should be on more frequently than he has been, and that's a faux pas on my part. But great guys, great people, and I need you guys to smash that link and get over here and help out the boys that we're doing the multi-stream with today, because got to spread the love. These guys are awesome guys, and so if you come in via my channel, then make sure you get over and that you hit that subscribe over there as well.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. Hey, Sean, let's start with you. I'll try and bring other people in as well, and we'll do the chat so your voice doesn't go before your business call at 9:15.
Sorry.
Let's talk about. I've put the banners up. We'll use that at least as a working agenda as far as we can. I mean, first of all, who are ENIC and their history of football club ownership? I mean, we know they came in. We know they bought the club from Sugar, but who are they and what do they represent?
Well, they're a property investment company. They're just they're an investment company essentially. They are a group of guys, obviously owned by Joe Lewis predominantly and his family, and obviously Daniel Levy is a minority shareholder within that. I think he's got 33% or something. You might be correct me on the actual specific numbers there, but about a third of ENIC is owned by Daniel Levy. Yeah, they had a history of buying into a bunch of different things. Mainly property is their history. They love to gentrify areas. They're a part of ENIC, is a part of the Tavistock group. Tavistock is a massive organisation that has ridiculous amounts of investments all over the place. They've got places in the Bahamas, places in South America, Central America, south of Central America. Lots of somewhat, you would call it, some shady practices with regards making some, I don't know how you would call it really. I'll keep it polite and call it gentrifying some native land, shall we say, that has had a bit of a kickback. And yeah, look, in terms of the things that we care about, obviously they were involved in football ownership, multi-club ownership. They were the groundbreakers in Europe. I think they were the second, actually, second group to buy into multiple football clubs back in the day, where before the UEFA rules changed. And they were, look, I mean, you could ask Rangers, you can ask Vicenza, Slavia Prague, Basel. I think was it Basel? I forget. There was
Basel.
Four teams.
Actually, I've got it up on the screen if you can see.
Oh, there you go. Oh, cool. Yeah. Sorry. There you go. But perfect. AEK Athens. So yeah, like they had minority slices in a lot of these, and some more majority slices in others. Now, depending on who you ask, and if you ask some of the guys in the more towards the Greek and the far east of Europe, then a lot of the directors of football and the other owners that they had to work with don't have the nicest things to say about Daniel Levy and their kind of investment and their involvement and their kind of coming in, shaking up the clubs, I guess, with regards cost efficiencies and trying to do things their way. Not a lot of great feedback, which is not uncommon for multi-club ownership. It's very rare that you find owners of football clubs that participate in multi-clubs that don't at least have at least one club within that umbrella that has a fan base or a previous owner system that resents the new owners. It usually comes down to pecking order, how they feel about playing feeder clubs to teams above them from different leagues. But multi-club ownership is a very, very difficult thing to get right. If you get it right, then it can become a conveyor belt of excellence, and the benefits are brilliant. But it's very difficult. It's hard enough to run one club profitably. It's even more difficult to do it over multiple clubs. But like I say, if you do get it right, then it can work. If you don't, it can be an absolute terrible ordeal. But Daniel Levy and ENIC were one of the first to break ground on it, boys. And then the rules changed. We didn't cross the line. The line crossed us when ENIC looked to buy Tottenham Hotspur, and they had to divest their interests in most of those other, or all of those other clubs, in order to go after the big fish, I guess, within their portfolio, which was Tottenham Hotspur. And last thing I'll say quickly before I hand back is, if that hadn't happened, if the rules were as loose now as as loose then as they are now, then you can only imagine where Tottenham could be if they'd got through all of the other things that they've done with regards gentrifying Tottenham and the stadium and the sort of divestiture of responsibilities to just the football club fans to bring in the revenue sources. All of that stuff that we've gone through in the last sort of 10 years, 15 years will still remain true. And we had the benefits of the multi-club ownership. Tottenham could be on a different stratosphere right now, but it wasn't to be. So,
I mean, it's fair to say, though, that ENIC are in this to make money.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, everyone is. There's probably like, I don't know, a handful at best around the world of owners that came in to take over football clubs that have a different relationship with money. And usually their ends are slightly different, right? They're either trying to, again, I've got to be careful how I say this, but I don't mean any offense to anyone that's watching that might take offense to this, and it's easily done. But essentially, you're either trying to launder money, or you're trying to, sports wash, trying to clean up a kind of reputational slur that might exist around a certain part of a certain culture or whatever. Or you're trying to figure out a way to, in the case of certain places in the Middle East, you're trying to remove your dependency from the black gold, to be, i.e. oil, to be the source of revenue for the next 10 generations of your country. And in the case of oil, obviously there's this move in the bigger political hemisphere to move away from that stuff and move towards greener energy. And so Saudi Arabia, Qatar, all these guys, they're looking at it going, well, there's plenty of benefits here in terms of moving into other areas. Sports is a very, very, very desirable place for many people to be, because the relationship with fans and customers, they're different, right? There's loyalty that doesn't have to be proven or earned. It is just a given because of who we are and why we love our football club. So look, for most owners, it's profit. For some, they have a different relationship, and they don't mind taking longer term views, and they don't mind spending a lot of money when the rules were allowed, that sort of thing. But yeah, in ENIC's case, of course, profitability is obviously the end game, but that is the case for 99% of owners in football clubs.
Sure. We'll talk about the future ownership potential as we go on, but profit's not a dirty word, Sean.
I don't think it is. All of us that work in capitalism or come from countries that embark on capitalism, every company that you work for, even if you don't own your own companies, right, they need to turn a profit to pay your wages. It is what it is. Capitalism, profit, all these things, it all comes down to being able to put food on your table. And some people maybe a little bit greedy. Some people, I don't think there's any such thing as a clean billionaire, for what it's worth. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Daniel Levy, ENIC are any better or any worse than anybody else, or Elon Musk. They've all walked over 1 million people to get where they've got to. So it's not, it's definitely not, I don't think it's a dirty word, but it's probably not a dirty process if you are driven by, it's certainly not a clean process if you're driven by those things to the ends where you end up with that many numbers of zeros in your bank balance.
But I mean, as you said, and we'll talk, there's not that many fairy godmothers or fairy godfathers out there that are going to be spending billions of pounds on players just for the greater glorification of Tottenham Hotspur. We'll talk. I'm going to keep, as I say, I'm going to keep the pace of this quite quick if I can, because of the time constraints, and get to some of the nitty gritty. 2001, Sean, they acquired, I think, 85.55%, which is just short of 15%, are now owned by, I think, small shareholders who had the shares prior to that.
Yeah, 30,000 shareholders still remain. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I am one. I think I've inherited some from my late father. You have, Sean. There'll be people watching.
No,
that have
I'm not.
small shareholders.
People always say, "Oh, Sean Butler's a shareholder." I'm not a shareholder. I'm not a shareholder.
Yeah, I mean, they paid around £47 million. I mean, it seems absurd now. But the club wasn't in a good fight. People forget the club wasn't in a good state then.
No, it wasn't. It was even worse under the previous tenant or the previous custodian in Irving Scholar. I mean, Alan Sugar wanted to keep hold of the club. He only sold because of other things that got in the way. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard this story. I've said it a few times. Terry Venables was obviously one of the shareholders at the time, and he ended up employing my dad and the company that he works for to sell his stake onto the open market through investment banking outfits and hedge funds. But Alan Sugar was absolutely furious. He phoned my dad up and said, "Oh, I'm going to sue the company you work for." I won't say the name of the company, but unless you pull that sale. And my dad was like, "It's too late. Like, it's already been plugged, right?" So as a consequence of not getting Terry Venables' stake, Daniel Levy, Alan Sugar basically then, as far as I'm aware, sort of saw the writing on the wall and was already under the pressure of some pretty, unhappy fans. People were going outside his house and apparently in protesting, which is pretty scary, I'm sure. And in the end, I think it was just easier to kind of cash in and walk away. And Alan Sugar still made a profit on the deal. So you're right, Ian. It's not a huge number compared to what football clubs go for in today's terms, but at the time, it wasn't cheap.
But if I can take that on 1992, Sky, I mean, I know people think that football actually began in this country in 1992, but when Sky took over the televising of English football, the landscape changed completely. Alan Sugar in Amstrad was manufacturing satellite boxes and satellite dishes for Sky. Or for B Sky, B or BSB Sky, whatever it was in those days. If I'm putting a case against Alan Sugar, I'm saying he should have been alert to the potential, the massive potential that football had, because Sky, in my view, doesn't have a business model if it doesn't have English televised football. And both, and we've suffered for 30 years because of Alan Sugar's short-sightedness as a businessman.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes and no, I guess. I mean, yeah, Alan Sugar could have seen the wood for the trees. I don't personally think Alan Sugar is that much to write home about as a businessman. Like, he's done very well for himself, better than I ever will. So, who am I to judge? But I would just say that, he was still trying to sell those weird telephones, fax machine type things, 15 years after the fax machine became fairly redundant. So I don't think he's the kind of the genius that maybe the Apprentice or whatever would have you believe he is. I think he's a little bit kind of dated and doesn't. I think he's maybe always living a little bit in the past. I don't think maybe it's changed now, but even back then I think he was always kind of hanging on to older technology. And so look, if you don't see the wood for the trees, if you're not seeing the way the world is moving, which way the wind is turning or blowing, then you don't really want that guy to be running your football club. He had the opportunity if he had a bit more prescience, but look, you know how I feel on this channel, on my channel at least. I don't think that Daniel Levy is anything like the pariah that he's portrayed to be. I think he's made a lot of mistakes. I think he's greedy. I think he's got the wrong risk appetite for football ownership generally. And I think that maybe he's been a little bit naive to think that the rules around PSR and FFP, all that stuff was going to hold any weight. I think I'm guilty of it as well, expecting that the Premier League had the ability to create rules that would have the teeth. But ultimately, I think that Daniel Levy's done a really good job in Tottenham, taking us from that kind of 13th, 12th position, 14th, whatever, during the early stages of the new century, and making us perennially knocking on the door. Like, the top 4 or 5 teams have always, It's a lot easier to get from 15th, 14th to 6th, 5th than it is to get from 5th and 6th to 1st, right? That door is, we knock on the door all the time, but it's a really heavy door. I said it on a show earlier on. I think it's like Fort Knox. It's a bloody heavy door to open, and no one else has done it either. You know, Everton used to be a top 4 team, the old top 4, they fell away. Aston Villa relegated, come back in, knocking on the door now, but probably won't make it through it. Neither will Newcastle, in my opinion, despite all of their wealth. You know, there's a never-ending stream of teams that would. I think people like Brighton and Brentford, they get all this wonderful plaudits thrown at them for their data science model and their ability to create conveyor belts of talent. But if you want to become a team that's perennially competing with the big boys, you can't continue to sell your best players. And therefore, if Brighton and Brentford or those sorts of types end up not selling the next Caicedo, not selling the next Lavia, not selling the next whoever, then they're going to have to turn to other revenue streams to be able to sustain themselves. And they don't have them. Whereas Tottenham do, right? Tottenham fail miserably in so many departments. In the past, youth development, in obviously trading, transfer trading. But in the A, Bs and Cs of how do you create revenues to compete, we're right up there with the very best of them. And I think that Daniel Levy, he should be judged as a businessman for his business acumen, and he should be judged on his hiring and firing of people that are experts in the departments that he isn't. And also, he should be judged on his ability to let go of the steering wheel. And unfortunately, for what we've seen recently, it looks like he still can't release the steering wheel when it comes to trading transfers, and that's a problem for me. But I genuinely think he's a better owner than people give him credit for.
He's a micromanager. Sorry, Adrian, go on.
On that, Sean, it does appear that ENIC's direction of travel is to gentrify the area around the stadium. So the land values go up, the value of the stadium goes up, and also to tap in the estimated 34 million Spurs fans worldwide, which must be a gold mine to tap in. I'm just wondering if there's been a change of attitude there towards the footballing side.
I certainly think that he's starting to do things differently. I certainly think that there's... It's such a complex topic, right? People think football, maybe playing the game is simple, keep the tactics simple, don't overcomplicate things. But in terms of, you know, the moving pieces in football ownership, in how to compete, it's one of the most complex, I believe, industries, just because the amount of variables that are there that will influence your likelihood of success and failure that just impact you as a one-off team. You know, like the injuries that you have, not just as a topic, but the frequency of them, the compounding effect of if they happen in the same place at the same time to the same teams, to the same position. The kind of, if you can't get a player fit, if they keep going back in circles, obviously player training is massively important. VAR decisions, refereeing decisions, you know, but sort of good form, bad weather, all these things affect you. And every game they could be different. One game could go the wrong way, one game could go the right way. But then you multiply that by 19 other teams, and every single season is different. And I think that people like to oversimplify the process of analysing, you know, where the blame is, and then going, you know what, there's a common denominator, let's put it at his feet. And I just think that there's so many variables and so many things that are outside of the control of any particular club that do affect your ability to have success, that you shouldn't simplify the process in order to come to a simplified answer. With regards to, has Daniel Levy changed his is he gentrifying Tottenham's footballing stuff, Adrian? I think that there's some indication that he has done. I think that he's maybe recognized that inflation, like whilst you can catch up and your revenues can be extortionate, ultimately the inflation in football caused by, again, things outside of Tottenham's control is such that £50 million 5, 7, 8 years ago bought you a top 10, top 20 player in his position in the world. These days it gets you a Brennan Johnson, or it gets you a brilliant but yet untested Archie Gray, for example. And so I just think that you have to pivot with the times. You have to kind of shake hands with reality. And I think that Daniel Levy makes a lot of the same mistakes he's always made in terms of getting involved and haggling, negotiate. I think his negotiation style is awful. I think he's like given so much plaudits for being this, you know, tough negotiator. I don't think you should be a tough negotiator in football. I think tough negotiations should be something that you reserve if you see the person that you're dealing with as a one and done transaction. Absolutely. And in football, it isn't. In football, you have to go back to that same table with the same team, maybe 3 or 4 times a decade. And so you shouldn't be biting the hand that feeds you, and you shouldn't be burning bridges. And I think that his kind of hardline approach to football negotiations of it's my way or the highway, here's my price, you pay it or you don't. I think it's stupid personally, but I do think he's made improvements in other areas. So,
I've not put it up, but there's a quote that people could look at from his mother saying about he won't make much or something like that. And it's almost like you can almost understand the psychology of Daniel Levy. I've got to keep proving everybody wrong every day of my life. And he doesn't see the big picture. But let's talk about where he's taken the club, Sean. I mean, you're a bit younger than me, but I mean, I remember the old stadium, before the east and west stands were developed, and then the old White Hart Lane with not only with the shelf, but the the boys enclosure in front of the old west stand and wooden seats behind the Paxton Road and Park Lane. So, I mean, this is a very different scenario now. This, state-of-the-art training ground and this state-of-the-art stadium. Where do you think Levy sees that in the development of the team and the club? Because he said that the new stadium would be the game changer, that I can compete with the Arsenals, the Liverpools, and the Manchester Uniteds with the revenue streams. And yet, given that opportunity, it now seems he's got a ceiling maybe of 60 million tops, and the 60 millions he's spent on Richarlison and Ndombele have not proved to be money well spent.
Yeah, see, I take a different stance now. A lot of people say we were promised the game-changing stadium, and it hasn't been. I think it has been in terms of our ability to spend money. The 5 years, the average net spend for the 5 years before we moved out of Tottenham, out of the White Hart Lane, we had a net spend of £13 million a year. The 5 years since, we've had a net spend on average. Sorry, £30 million a year on average. That was in the previous five. Now it's 112, 115, and I think most recently 160 million. I think, or 140, 150 million, whatever it was last year. So I think that you're looking at an increase on average increase in spending that 5 years versus the 5 years comparatively of like a 6 times, 5-6 times. Increase. So anyone that says it hasn't been a financial game changer, I think is being disingenuous. And I think you have to balance that with the fact that inflation in football, as I said a minute ago, has just gone through the roof. And I don't think anyone could predict that. But part of that, again, is external factors, not even within football, but actually politically. There's just so much money floating around the economy, none of it in our pockets, unfortunately, but there's just so much money been printed because of COVID, and because of the war in Ukraine and all these things that are just going through the roof. Americans, COVID, I think in America in 18 months of COVID, 40% of the entire money supply that has ever been printed since the petrodollar, since the transition to the petrodollar, was printed in 18 months in America. I mean, that's just obscene, which obviously leads to the inflation that you have. But ultimately, that is going to find its way into the deepest pockets. It always does. And then some of those pockets go into football. And so you're going to have this thing where, it's just a natural consequence that suddenly, seeing 250 grand a week salaries. I know it doesn't happen at Tottenham very often, but it's happening more and more around football. You have the Saudi Arabian entrance into the market. All of these things create fluff and frothiness in the market. And it almost outgrows the amount of revenue generation that Tottenham have been very successful in trying to achieve. And so, like I say, we are generating more money than ever. We are spending more money than ever. We're not spending, the money doesn't go as far as it used to. And in terms of like being able to compete, again, it's a kind of not a misnomer. I guess it's just how you interpret the phrase. It's going to be a game changer. In what way? Is it a game changer in our ability to go and buy the best players in the world? Well, I think there's other things that come into play there. If you are a top 10 player in your position, do you want to come to Tottenham when you don't have the guarantees of trophies? There's absolutely no track record of it in our lifetime or in the most recent generation. Are you going to go to the other teams? Like, if you are a top 10 player that's emerging, you're going to be sought after by Arsenal, by City, by Liverpool, by Chelsea. Those top 4 or 5 teams that have always won. 90% of all trophies are won by those 5 teams. And those guys have got the track record and say, look, you can come and sit on the bench and you can fight for your place, but it doesn't really matter because you're going to win trophies if you go to Manchester City. You're probably going to win trophies if you go to Liverpool. You're going to you'll have a good chance, but not a great chance of winning trophies if you go to Arsenal, less so for United, and then Tottenham sits at the bottom of that sort of top 6. So I think that there's a difference between has it created enough, has the stadium and the training ground created a vision which can sell the idea to certain players? Yes. Has it created enough money for us to compete financially? Yes. Has it created the amount of success that can allow you to compete on the other factors that are just as important? No. Just the last thing I'll quickly say on that one, before I know it's a long answer, I'm sorry. But
no, it's okay.
All right.
The last thing I would say is, when you said about the ceiling around 60 million, I also, and I put my neck on the line on this one, and I could be in the mud in 18 months' time, but I have said that I believe that by the next summer's transfer window, not this summer, but the season after, all being well, if we have our youth policy that's maturing nicely, I think we're putting in a lot of groundwork right now to get through the deadwood, to bring in these youth-centric policy, because that is a place where you can compete on the transfer strategies. It's more risk. You don't know if these guys are going to make it or not. But if you go and buy some of the best youth talent out there, then hopefully they're going to mature and they will appreciate as well, and we'll close the gap on some of our net spend mistakes. But ultimately, I do believe that when you don't have to replace 9 players in your squad every year, because that's what we've had to do for the last 2 years, I do believe that if we get to a position where we only need 2 or 3 players, I think you will see a £100 million player at Tottenham in the next 18 to 24 months. The only thing I'm worried about is, what does a £100 million buy you in 24 months? Does it buy you a Brennan Johnson, or does it buy you a top 10 player in his position in the world? And we won't know until we get there. But for me, I think that you will see Tottenham break the bank for a player or 2, because we won't need 8 players in that summer window, hopefully.
I'm going to bring you on. Sorry, go on, Adrian. Sorry.
I do agree that the stadium has been a game changer. I think a lot of fans are assuming game changing in a way of success, and we all get that. But it's definitely been a game changer in wages and money spent on players, because we spent an estimated 1.1 billion on players since the stadium opened in 2019. It doesn't say much for our recruitment, does it? You know what I mean? But I mean, it's still a lot of money. So, and look, I think we've failed better, as I like to say, in the transfer windows recently. Failed better. We've brought players in, younger ones, which have helped, which is good, because we probably weren't in a position to bring in more expensive oven-ready players. And we've done well with, whether you believe some of these players are going to be good long-term or not, we've done well bringing in Sarr and Udogie, and young players like that, even Johnson and things like that, So we have improved. We all want to see growth, don't we? I want to see growth this second half of the season. That's what I wanted to see, and us really go hard for these 3 cups, right? So we'll see what happens. But I'm hopeful that, we can do really well in Europa if we hit our true form, and I think we may get a bit of long-awaited success.
Yeah.
Sean, I want to, I've picked this right up from one of your own shows that you did that I had the pleasure of listening to. No naming rights deal for the stadium. The stadium opened in 2019, so it's coming up for 6 years old. Even at, let's say it was 20 million a year, which seems to be less than Levy wants, which is something else we'll come on to later. But that's 120 million that we haven't got, that we might have got.
Yeah, look, the naming rights deal is it's an interesting topic, because there are plenty of reasons why it's not always a case of you're losing 120 million in that example, right? That you've just given there, because there's an intangible, an unqualifiable, and unquantifiable amount of money that has been made by increasing the brand of the club into areas that are massively growing markets that won't necessarily or wouldn't necessarily have had these people that are now moving into the Premier League having made a choice on which team to support. It is 100% true that there will be a significant amount of future revenue that comes into this club as a consequence of not selling your branding rights to Google or Amazon or whoever else. There's a reason why Google and Amazon want that brand awareness, because every time that there's an NFL game on TV or a Beyonce concert spoken about in various different pockets of the populace. And obviously Tottenham matches, right? All of that stuff, whenever it gets put on TV, there's a reason why these people sort of partially fund the stadium itself by selling those naming rights. Is because it's beneficial to the brand that is looking to get involved. What I would say is, despite Tottenham looking for it, and despite Todd Klein being brought in for that particular purpose most primarily, just like when we're trying to find a new owner for Tottenham Hotspur and the club is valued at 4 billion, the amount of people that are going to be interested in Tottenham that can afford 4 billion, that can come in and participate in some sort of shared ownership with Daniel Levy still having his hand on the prize, all that stuff, it becomes very, very filtered in terms of the potential pool of investors and potential pool of buyers. And with regards, stadium naming rights, it's also not that easy to find a company that is going to fit the purposes of what they're looking for. Bearing in mind that a club needs to basically, a brand would need to basically be B2C, like business to consumer, so that it's the average person in the street on the TV, sitting in Australia, sitting in America, sitting in London, who will see that brand and will say, oh, that's right. And then later on, there'll be some intangible benefit and they'll go and make the purchase. And there's not that many companies out there that are going to see the value in spending £25 million, because there's not that many companies out there that have B2C businesses that also have an audience that's global. There's not that many. Yeah. There's maybe Microsoft is a good example of one. Teams like Spotify, social media channels, that sort of thing for sure. Insurance companies maybe, but if you look across into places like Germany, for example, where there's some like medical companies like Bayer, who obviously own who built Bayer, the football club. They obviously sponsor their own stadium, but that wouldn't work in the UK because there's no medical marketing allowed in the UK. None of that stuff is legal over here, whereas it is in America. Things like cryptocurrencies that are very relevant, but only relevant for short periods of time because of the cyclicality of that industry. So it's very difficult to be able to strike a deal with a brand where you can get the top dollar that you want, that they're going to see the value in, that they're going to see the benefit of having consumers all across the world, that doesn't have a cyclicality effect, that isn't going to be harmed by any potential downturn in form of the club, that isn't also going to have some sort of political considerations with the ties of the club and whatever else might happen. That there's just so many considerations that goes into that. And look, Daniel Levy wants top dollar, and they're really he wants £25 million a year. In terms of football stadiums, it's different. The Crypto.com arena in the LA Staples Arena, that's a smaller arena, but they have events there 5 days a week, I believe. Stadiums don't, right? So stadiums, I think they have 18 Premier League home games, maybe half a dozen cup games in an average season, and now because of the events, maybe an extra 20 events or something. So more so than most. But if you look around Europe, Spotify, the deal with Barcelona, that's only 20 million euros. And by the way, the Barcelona, that whole chicanery with what happened with Barcelona's finances, they had to sell 10% of their TV rights to a German company that was supposed to be for 60 million euros. They only ended up getting 20 million euros. The other 40 million is now come through Spotify. Loads of weird things happening with that whole story that I won't get into on this conversation. But essentially, the naming rights deal. Long story short, guys, I'm sorry for my long-winded answers here. But long story short, yes, it's desirable. No, I wouldn't say that we've sacrificed £120 million because it's very difficult to know how much money we've gained from having the long-term benefit of people choosing Tottenham as a consequence of seeing the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium when they tune into the NFL or whatever else. And so there's definitely some loss. It's not an opportunity cost, but if there's a price that smarter people than I have figured out that the value of Tottenham Hotspur's branding is worth X amount. And if they can't find a buyer, they shouldn't sell themselves short, because the last thing you want to do is get into bed with a company for a 10-year deal when you're undercutting the market because of the economics of the environment at the time. So Daniel Levy's right to hold out, in my opinion, for the right price.
Great. Around 200 of you watching. Thank you. We would love it if you would give the show a like. Helps us enormously. Also, if you can subscribe to the channel. Adrian, you got the link to subscribe to ours there?
I haven't. I've only got 3 links to show.
No, that's what I thought. And I think the link.
Guys, if you're watching on the Spurs Talk Show, literally in the title of the description, the Spurs Diehards TTID link is there. Just click on it. It will open up another tab. Smash the subscribe. They're great guys, and they bring out great content, and they should be a lot higher in their subscribers than they are. So make sure you get over there and just do the right thing, guys. It's not difficult.
Brilliant.
It doesn't cost you a penny.
Love to get over 1,000 tonight.
Sean, I'm not a fan of bringing investors like Staveley. One thing, because we know investors, they want a return on their investment, don't they? It's the same thing. I think Levy and Co want it simply because it means they don't have to go and borrow money to invest in, infrastructure, the women's training ground, the hotel and things like that. That will save them having to borrow money. And if they borrow money, we'll have even less money to spend on the team. So I think more of an ideal partner would be a buyer, would be someone like Alphabet who own Google, because at least they're worth like $1 trillion. There are some trillion organizations out there, so Microsoft probably a one, Elon Musk being another. He could call it a SpaceX stadium. It looks like a spaceship.
That's right. Are you talking about a naming rights deal, or are you talking about an overall purchase of the?
I'm talking about overall purchase now.
Okay,
I'm going to come to it. I'm coming. Come in there. Get in there, Adrian.
All right. So,
honest.
My idea was I've given this some thought. I'm not an expert on finances, but like I thought, if you want to buy a football stadium with a football club, in one way, you don't really buy that club to make money. If you're that rich, because it's a shining jewel in London, you use it to enhance your global brand. If you're that big as an institution, organisation, company that's worth $1 trillion, $4 billion is not going to be too much of a pinch for you. I mean, it's still hell of a lot of money. But if you bought the club for $4 billion, think of all your partners and associates that want to come with you, want a piece of the action, want to sponsor the stadium and all that. I mean, I know we can't get involved with the sugar daddy, because at the end of the day, with the new rules, you'll be limited to how much you spend. We've seen what's happened with Newcastle. Their owners are worth $36 billion, and yet you can't spend money. So when people talk about billionaire companies or investors and groups, I think that's not what I'd like to see. It may happen. I mean, I don't get a vote on it. It may happen, but I don't like the idea of investors.
Yeah, look, I mean, private equity. You've seen it with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Not that he's private equity, but you see the sort of outcomes there, right? Cost cuttings, efficiencies. Efficiencies is another word for cost cuttings, right? That's the way businesses work. They'll dress it up as efficiencies, but it's really just where's the fat, where's the bloat? Let's get rid of it. And can you imagine? Just I'll put it out there to anyone that's watching that hates Daniel Levy. Can you imagine if you got your way? People that say anyone but him will do, and someone like Sir Jim Ratcliffe came in and then turned around and said to all the stewards, they get paid £50 a session at United, at least. I don't know if it's the same at Tottenham. That when you do 10, you get a bonus of £100 or whatever it was, right? And they said, sorry, we're going to cut that bonus because essentially we have to pay Marcus Rashford's wages. I mean, that would go down. I mean, it went down like a shit sandwich at United, but I just think that it would be, absolutely like it'd be intolerable. There'll be riots in the YouTube channels, at least, if Daniel Levy did something like that. And that is the sort of thing that happens when you bring in people that are essentially looking for an ROI. And that's what you're right. You're right in what you say, Adrian. That private equity and investors like that, when they're paying top dollar for what is essentially almost a finished product in terms of all of the infrastructure is already done. There's no low-hanging fruit left. There's a few areas for massive growth and return and revenue extensions for all Premier League clubs. Things like maybe multi-club ownership is one way that you could get. You could see a viable new owner coming in and taking us forward. Although, like I've said before, I think Daniel Levy and ENIC have got experience in that regard. So it wouldn't surprise me if they were to go back down that path. Especially they've got Scott Munn, who's got experience with the City Football Group. But apart from multi-club ownership, really you may be looking towards the like the Netflix for sports idea, the kind of the TV media rights, and that would be a massive increase, 4 or 5x on what they currently get and what teams currently get. There'd also be no distribution or issues with regards to distribution of where that money goes. Currently, of course, the teams that get the most TV time get the biggest slice of the pie. In a world where it went to a Netflix for sport, where all the games were available at all times, then you would get a far more even distribution. So the smallest teams and the bigger teams would all get a far closer slice of what's available, which is beneficial. The problem is there's two major kind of elephants in that room, which are one is the naming rights deal for the next 5 years has already been done. I think the next one that hasn't been negotiated is 2030. So any new investor would have to come in with their eye on that and wait 5 years at least before that would even potentially become a viable thing. And there's no guarantees that Sky wouldn't find a way, or TNT wouldn't find a way to make sure that they kept and maintained their finger in that pie. Because as you said, Ian, without that, there's no business model at all for Sky TV anymore, right? So they're hanging on to that for dear life. The other thing, of course, is the political side of it, where there's still the 3 p.m. blackout for TV shows, for sports on TV, and that hasn't been removed, and there's no intention, according to the governments, to do that. So outside of those things, outside of multi-club ownership and outside of a Netflix for sport, broadcasting rights, there really isn't that much to get excited about if you are an investor that's paying top dollar, and Daniel Levy will want top dollar. So, the only other thing that you could do and find value in if you're a Tottenham fan would be, but funnily enough, to go to somewhere like the Kuwaitis, or one of those kind of few remaining places where they have a different relationship with money, where they're happy to kind of focus on different things. But ultimately what they could do is, which you wouldn't find with a private equity company, you wouldn't find with an American investor, you wouldn't find with any kind of traditional investment that does focus on profits. They would leverage the debt of the club. They would extend the debt of the club, and they would be doing it at far higher interest rates than what our current debt is at, which wouldn't be good. The interest on the debt would be insane. For example, Manchester United had to pay £66 million in interest last year on their debt that doesn't need to exist, because the Glazers took out all that, was it 500, $700 million worth of dividends over the last 15 years and didn't pay the debt down, which is outrageous. Whereas if you were to go and get one of those kind of oil-rich companies, then what they could do, because they have that different relationship with money, is pay off the debt, have that longer-term approach, and then by proxy, you would be able to see a different relationship with how Tottenham could spend their money in the transfer window, because you wouldn't have to spend the 30 million or 28 million pound a year, which we currently do, paying down the debt on the interest, because that would be written off in a takeover. And so that money could go therefore into the net squad spend ratios, and ultimately increase your transfer budget by about 30 to 40 million pound a year. And I believe even for brand new investors, they get an extension on the allowable losses. So you could end up for the first 3 years seeing, in a world where you were taken over fully by a Kuwaiti outfit, maybe an additional 50 to 60 million pound a year in the transfer budgets, presuming all other revenue streams remain even. So there's the kind of value proposition for doing it that way. But outside of that, I'm not sure what really changes, boys. I don't know what changes with regards new owners, apart from maybe a different appetite to risk. That's about it.
Let me bring you in on this, Sean, because I think this is important. Sorry, I've made a typo here. It's April 2024 when the last set of annual accounts came out, and I've abbreviated this slightly. But the board are in discussion with prospective investors that to continue to invest in the teams and capital projects, the club requires a significant increase in its equity base. And it's the words equity base that caught my imagination as soon as I saw them. Because, Sean, some people certainly might want that explained, because that's not simply we want to sell 50% of the shares and put the money in mine and Joe Lewis in the trust's pockets. This is creating new equity, new shares, new money. So what's the thinking there? Because I'm going to come on and ask, nothing's happened, and why not? But first of all, what's the thinking in the strategic thinking by the board with that?
Yes, like you said, expanding the equity base means just that, right? It means increasing the shares in issue so that you dilute the shareholders that currently have their stake. Whatever the 30,000. I mean, this happened before with the £100 million that was supposed to be 150, and they came out and said, we have the option to draw down up to 150 million, and if so, there'll be in 3 different tranches, 50, 100, or 150, and if so, then the maximum dilution would be 3%, I think it was, or something like that, which valued the Tottenham at the time at something like $7 billion, which was insane to me. But I understand the logic behind it, because most businesses are valued at the last funding raise valuation. So if the last time money was injected into a business, the valuation of that capital injection, if you were to extrapolate that out over the entirety of the market capitalization, then that is what the company's valued at, especially when there's no other mechanisms or means to value. And so Daniel Levy could then go around thinking that he's got a $7 billion valued business. And as a consequence, he would hope and think that other people might come in the future and say, well, if it was last valued at $7 billion and Tottenham have improved since then and their revenues are going up, then it's valued at more than that. So you're robbing Peter to pay Paul if you're Daniel Levy and ENIC, in as much as you're diluting yourself and you're overpaying the minority shareholders by putting in the £100 million at a much more inflated valuation than is realistic. But in so doing, you hope that there's a secondary latter market that you can tap into where the next buyer pays the valuation. As it turned out, as I knew it would, there was none of that second bite of the cherry. And consequently, that's why they didn't take the last 50 million, because they went back to the drawing board and realized, why are we doing that when we're going to be over? And not that 50 million pounds is a lot of money to them, but these guys are business guys, right? It doesn't matter whether it's 50 quid or 50 million. At the end of the day, they don't want to have to pay 50 quid if the thing's only worth 30. And so they didn't want the last 50 million pound because they'd have to pay over the odds for it. And now they want to hand over to somebody else. And so essentially equity based, what we're talking about right now, is exactly the same thing. They'll add more shares to the business, and they will dilute everybody, including themselves, by allowing someone to come in and inject £500 million at whatever the valuation would be. That would obviously be negotiated by all the lawyers and everything, and the bank, whose name escapes me, forget. And obviously they haven't had that many bites, right? They haven't had that. They've had people that are interested, but I think it comes back down to Daniel Levy's valuation policies, his metrics. He doesn't want to dilute himself. He doesn't want to dilute himself at an undervaluation. And he thinks that the previous valuation was somewhere near the money, but it obviously wasn't. And so, I think 4 billion, 3.5 billion is something more likely the number. Obviously, you take the debt out of that, which is 700 million, or give or take 800 million, whatever it is. And it's going to be difficult to find a buyer that's going to want to pay that valuation when, as I said before, there isn't that much low-hanging fruit, unless you find someone that wants to take on a house that's already basically been done up. It's not like Newcastle, right? The people that came into Newcastle, they can spend £2 billion if they want to on building a new training ground, building a new stadium, re-gentrifying all of Newcastle. And Newcastle could really do with the gentrification generally, because it's a sleeping giant. It's a one club city. It's a fairly working class, very much a working class area. It hasn't really ever recovered from the coal mine closures in the Thatcherite era, and so it's an absolute sleeping giant of a city. And you can see the value to the Saudis to go in there and turn all that stuff into a much nicer, much more gentrified, even outside of the football club. And in so doing, they'll turn that valuation, they'll double, treble the valuation, 5x the valuation of the club. At Tottenham, it's a lot harder to do because of the economics of the area, because of the thing that's already been done, and because of Daniel Levy's valuation policies. I don't know if that's a long-winded answer, mate, but essentially it's just a case of
I think it
adding more
tells
money.
People what they want to know, and the fact that it would appear, and it's the same with transfer dealings, that Daniel always wants to pay cheap but sell expensive, and I imagine it's the same sort of thing. Go back to that quote that's in the annual accounts. I mean, you're a businessman too, and you've read these things. When I read that, I'm thinking this deal is imminent, because you don't put that into the public domain unless you're in fairly, in discussion with prospective investors, that those discussions have got legs. And
well, they have to. They have to say it. First of all, they have to. They're obliged because of the relationship to the stock exchange. They used to be on the London alternative investment market. They have to say when they're in discussions, because it might move the needle. They don't have to obviously strike a deal. So obviously they've had conversations. They have to announce that. In terms of, is it imminent? I mean, how long is a piece of string? Generally speaking, you would find if there's a willingness to do a deal, then something would happen. But like I said, this has been dragging on now for a couple of years almost. And that, again, it harks back to the point that Daniel Levy and Joe Lewis value this company at, it's like paying, £100 million for Caicedo, right? Like you are pricing in perfection in that player, and Chelsea were willing to do it. And well done to Brighton for finding a buyer. But most people would have gone, what? Even Archie Gray, what was it, 35 up to £45 million for a guy that's only played the championship level? Don't get me wrong, I knew he'd be a fantastic player, but you're pricing in a hell of a lot of future perfection, and you just don't know what's going to happen. And when it comes to Tottenham Hotspur, you can Daniel Levy and ENIC have done all this work, and they want a price. They want their, how do I say this? They want to make sure that they're getting their full valuation on a project that is nowhere near fully complete on the pitch, and they want to hand over eventually to someone that can take on the risk, but they want the price now for a no risk settlement, and that's the people that they're talking to are not idiots. They're obviously not idiots. Anyone that's got $1 billion in the bank has got there by being wily and knowing the right valuation for things and going about their business. And so I just think this is going to be a long drawn out affair. Maybe there'll be something that will come out in the press soon, but I'd imagine it won't. I think it will drag on for a long time yet.
Sean, I'd like your take on this. The bill for a football regulator is at the House of Lords. It's gone for the first reading, the second reading. I think it's either past the committee stage or it's at the committee stage. It's got 2 more readings to go through in the House of Lords. Then it has to go back to the Parliament and go through the same procedure again before giving royal assent.
Mm-hmm.
What are the pros and cons of a football regulator? I mean, I get why fans either for one after the European Super League debacle, right? Got fans, let's get one, right? Okay. And I'm sort of leaning that way as well. I mean, and how do you that'll affect investment in the club and ownership as well, like? Because it must have some sort of effect, maybe none.
No, it definitely does. Look, I'd summarize this because I've been taking forever to get to the answers, and I'm sorry because I never short time.
Right.
Okay. I would say in the Valley of the Blind, the one-eyed man is king. I think that the Premier League lawmakers, as we've seen recently with the PSO and the FFP, the absolute shambles is that whole process. The Premier League guys are not capable of setting rules in place. And then so the government wants to get in. You know, the government only gets involved if there's something in it for them. And it's not that they want the best for the football industry. They want their slice of the pie. They want to make sure that they're getting their, whatever it might be, whether it's, better tax efficiencies for profitability.
The cost for the football regulator and all expenses incurred is going to be the bare minimum. Minimum.
And there's jobs for the boys and it's a gravy train, all of that stuff. But that's probably kind of inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. The big fear for me is, let's be entirely honest, I don't know if everyone's political styles on there. I don't care whether it's Conservatives government, Reform. I don't care if it's Labour. I don't care, Liberal Democrats, you name it. There's not a single thing that any government has ever got involved in where efficiencies is the name of the game. Right? Look at the NHS. It's the most inefficient, giant walking toad of a organisation. Wonderful thing. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely adore, and everyone that works in the rank and file are fantastic. But in terms of bloat, it is insane how much waste and how much ridiculous slippage there is in that organisation. And yet, on paper, the government being able to control contracts and suppliers because they are essentially buying as one outfit, they should be able to control that spend and they should be able to handle the efficiencies. And it should become a far more effective way of dealing with an industry. I've never seen any nationalisation or any example of anything that's ever handled by the government to be an improvement. For me, I am a capitalist. I am a market private, a kind of a real market capitalist. I do think that whilst you get inefficiencies and whilst you obviously can get certainly you can get corruption, I do think that generally speaking, competition is the way to seek out fairness, and that's the way that you get all a rising tide lifts all ships. The idea that a football regulator is going to come in and make this game better, for me, is laughable. I don't think it's good. I think right now, it's horrendous. I think that the lawmakers right now are shambolic, but the government coming in is not going to make it better. It's going to be more clunky, more obtuse and more vague in terms of getting any clarification on how do we level the playing field, how do we stop the wealthiest clubs running away and finding loopholes, selling their hotels to each other, leasing them back. All this stuff is just ridiculous. But the football regulator run by the government isn't going to make it better. It's going to be worse, in my opinion. So I'm not for it at all, personally.
Okay, we got about 20 minutes, and I'm conscious of your time, Sean, and you need to join in the capitalist system in America and go and make lots of money and keeping the downtrodden down as we do. That's life. But seriously, let's talk, I think, for the time that we've got left. You mentioned the Glazers earlier, but I want to talk about the kind of options that might be open and the kind of people that might come in. And we've dealt with some of it. But whenever we talk about a takeover at Tottenham, or whether it's extending the equity base and bringing in a minority, or even a complete takeover, the name Amanda Staveley never far away from the table. So just from your perspective, who is she and what could she bring to the table? Because she's not a wealthy woman in her own right, not at these levels.
Not at these levels, but she is. Her and her husband are. They had a history back in, or her husband at least, was a pretty big mover and shaker in terms of in the financial markets and creating deals like off market deals, but has a lot of connections, a lot of networks. I don't know if he's involved in any of these consortiums. Obviously, she's connected to the Far East, or the Middle East rather, and she wanted, from what I gather, I'll be honest, I'm not an expert on this woman. I can tell you, I did look her up because I thought she was really. I was like, she's a good-looking bird, and I looked into it. Apparently, she's one of Prince Andrew's sort of girlfriends or growing up, and that. So, look, Wheeler and Dealer, high flyer, a socialite, but obviously she's smart. She's sharp as a cookie, and she wants more than just some money out of this. I think she's got ambitions to be a Wheeler and Dealer. Like, what was the girl's name? Karen Brady, was it?
West Ham.
West Ham.
She's still there, I think.
Yeah, and obviously Delia Smith did okay at Norwich as well. Doing okay at Norwich. I don't think that there's any necessary issue or concerns. I think that she would be a good involved. It'd be good to see her, having a hands-on approach to a football club. I just don't think that Daniel Levy's the sort of guy that is ever going to, we've seen it with Kinski, we saw it with Mwani. That one's obviously fallen over tonight, so he's failed on that one. We saw it with Jed Spence. This idea that you're bringing in all these new people, Scott Munn, I'm stepping away from football. Johan Lang, Paratici still involved. Too many cooks spoil the broth. She wants a spot at the table. I think one of the reasons why maybe the deal hasn't been struck yet, it's not about the money. It might not even be about the valuation. I might be wrong about that, but I do think there's something that's blocking it, and I think it's because she wants a seat on the board and to have some influence. And I just think that Daniel Levy doesn't want to hand over, to anybody. Doesn't matter who it is. He wants the money, but he wants your money, but he doesn't want your opinion. He wants your investment, but he doesn't want your say. He doesn't want your influence, and doesn't want anybody to get in the way. He likes to do it his way, And look, fair play to him. He's taken a club, like you said, Ian, at the start, 49 million quid, and it's now worth closer to 4 billion. Fantastic for him. But at the end of the day, you're going to cut your nose to spite your face. If you think that you are the answer to all of Tottenham's prayers, after 25 years, we haven't got there. Plenty of reasons why they're outside of his control, but plenty of the fault goes to him as well. And I don't mind seeing, I would like someone else to come in now with a fresh set of eyes, with some new ideas. Whether it's her or not, I don't know. I think that she does. I think that the problem is that I think wherever she ends up, it might be Monaco, because I know the guy, is it Roboblov or something? His name is, who owns Monaco, one of the last few oligarchs who owns the European football team. He wants out. He wants to sail off on his yacht. And maybe Monaco is a bit more of a kind of realistic ambition, a lot lower valuation. For 500 million, they could probably buy the entire club, and then she can be the princess of Monaco, right? And so maybe that makes more sense. I'd be very surprised if Staveley and her consortium ended up buying into Tottenham.
No, I put AS Monaco in my notes, Sean, because that was the last I saw. But I think we've answered that. There'll be a number of Jewish supporters watching. And it would appear that Staveley is looking at money from Iran and or Qatar. And I think a lot of people, not just Jewish people, but Jewish people especially, Iran, a sworn enemy of Israel. Qatar, we know, was harbouring the Hamas leaders after the 7th of October 2023. A lot of people would say that's not the investment that people at Tottenham want. Whether those countries would want to invest in a club that, rightly or wrongly, is known as a Jewish club. But yeah. Look, it's a difficult topic to bring. I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form on what's going on in the Middle East. It's not a topic I feel even remotely qualified to talk about. Obviously, I've read and watched the news, and I know that the guys, the Palestinian, the terrorists, I guess, that they. That their leader was being harbored in penthouses, multi-million pound penthouses in Qatar. So it's a political hot potato. I'll say I don't really feel comfortable talking about it because I know that I'll get heat for saying something that I'm not qualified. I don't understand it. But what I would say is I'd be incredibly surprised if Iran or Qatar
were people that were ending up involved in Tottenham Hotspur, but just because for the reasons that you said, right? There's all this very recent, very real problems in that part of the world, and I just don't really see the kind of see it as a fit. I could be wrong, usually am, but that's about as far as I can say, Ian, because I don't know the specifics of that history.
Fair enough.
Sean, do you think, like I do, that there's more chance of investing in Tottenham from America, especially with our connection with the NFL, especially with the fastest growing fan base out there? I have no idea. You might know more what the financial environment is out there now after COVID, and even the effect on commodities because of the war in the Middle East and Ukraine with the wheat and things like that. So,
well, it's interesting. So,
hoping as well, really.
Yeah, I think logically it makes a lot of sense for the reasons you just said. Like Daniel Levy's got his eyes up there. I also think that's why part of our transfer strategy will probably look towards people like Cardoso, maybe like an Anthony Robinson. I think that there's logic. The World Cup's in America. I personally think that Poch will come back to Tottenham after he's done with America in the World Cup. But I do think there's a never-ending list of reasons why, if there's going to be investment, it will come from that direction. What I would say is that whole side of money is entirely dependent on interest rates. And interest rates being what they are right now, they're as high as they have been in the last, or they're maybe just slightly off the top, but they're basically as high as they have been in the last since the financial crisis of 2007. After that, it went to free money, 0%, 0.5%, and stayed there for 18 years. After COVID and the inflation, everything shot up, and it has only recently started to come down. What happened on Friday, believe it or not, there was the non-farm payrolls, which, without boring everybody, essentially it's just economic data that comes out once a month in America, and there's an expected amount of new jobs that are created that don't include farm hands. And whatever the number was, I think the expected number was about 180,000, and it blew it out of the water. The actual number was about 350,000, something like that, which the way that you interpret that is, the economy's strong in America. It's like people are hiring, right? It's a good thing. And so you would expect the stock market, therefore, to fly up. That's the natural consequence. Strong economy, strong stock market. Doesn't work that way anymore. It's like an inverse of what's happening because of the interest rate conversation. If the economy's strong, then there's less likelihood that there's going to be a reduction in interest rates, because a strong economy with lots of people getting paid means more money floating around the economy, which means more inflation. Therefore, you keep interest rates high to try and take some of that money out of the economy so people save it in their bank accounts. And consequently, interest rates remaining high was really bad news for the market. So the stock market took a massive hit. And that, by proxy, is also the reason why you probably won't see, or it's less likely that you will see investment in things like sports teams by private equity, because their willingness to get involved in long-term asset risk, which is what a football club investment would be, is predicated on cheap money. And cheap money is not happening when interest rates stay high because of the risk of inflation. So I'm not sure if that's a kind of long-winded answer, but essentially I agree with you, Adrian, that the most logical answer would be investment from the West. But that is dependent on economic environments, not so much with the Middle East. They just, if they want to come, if whatever, Brunei or Kuwait want to come in and buy Tottenham, as I say, that's not so much about, is it cheap borrowing money? They've got all the money in the world anyway, so it doesn't matter to them. I think it's less likely now than it was a couple of weeks ago that American private equity money would come in. Doesn't mean it won't happen. This could be just a temporary thing. But if interest rates remain high, it's less likely that private equity buys things like football clubs.
I don't know how long you've got left, but I've got 3 links for you. So before you go, can you just make sure
got another about 10,
to go
5,
through
10
each link
minutes.
and explain them to
I got 5 minutes, guys. I've got 5 minutes. That's all. Sorry.
I'll give you 5. I'll take the 5. Go on. You want to do those links, Adrian? I've got a couple of other.
Yeah, this link is
very
just
quickly.
this is a new link, Sean. What's this one about? I'm subscribed to it. I know you and Johnny are doing this.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. Football Inc. is just Johnny and my. I love Johnny to pieces. He's a part of the furniture on my channel, cool. And I've always said to him, like, he needs to have his channel.
Try and get him on when he's not busy.
yeah, you got to get him on. Yeah, he's a great guy. And
both together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, love to, 100%. Football Inc. is where we're just putting our thoughts out there. It's not about Tottenham specifically. Tottenham might be a conversation, but it's more around just whatever's happening in the world of football. Could be finance, could be multi-club ownership, could be ownership models, could be transfers, could be whatever else. So yeah, appreciate you. Smash the subscribe. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And this one, the Sean Butler TV. What's this one about?
Yeah, that's the finance. That's my finance channel. That's what I was doing before the hacking, before shenanigans, and I let that drop, but I'm bringing it back. Obviously, it's transfer window, and obviously there's loads of things happening now with PSR and FFP. So there'll be loads of stuff coming out with regards to specifics of non-Tottenham stuff, but within the world of finance. So if you like that stuff, smash that subscribe as well.
And this is a normal podcast that us fans in the community have up and running. Right, so go on in.
Yeah, no, and if please, if if you're watching the show, please hit the like button. Please hit the like button and the subscribe button. Really
most important, guys. Most important. Everyone that's watching this, if you're watching it on my channel and you haven't already, I say it for the third time, you have to get over. Go to my title, hit the Spurs Diehards TTID link. New tab will open up. Smash the subscribe. Get these boys to 1,000. Well overdue. Well overdue.
Thanks for that. And our shows do go out every Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 o'clock. We keep them the same time so as people knows. Obviously, we're competing everyone, but you can't not clash with anyone when you're out there, when you're on a podcast now. There are so many good communities out there. But they all have a different thing because they have a different tone. They all have a different tone. Go on, Sean. Go on, Ian. Sorry.
One last question for you. From what you're saying, whether it's the money that Levy asked for, the state of markets at the moment, the price of money, which looks like it's going to stay high for the foreseeable future, we're stuck with Levy, more or less, aren't we? Unless this fairy godmother comes along and waves a money tree at him and pays £5 billion and says, "Thanks, it's mine."
Yeah. Look, I mean, things change very quickly, and like I say, take everything I say with a pinch of salt. Like I don't know what's going on. I give you what my thoughts are based on how I read and interpret things, but could be massively wrong on a lot of these things. What I would say is, I don't think there's any change happening at Tottenham. I think Daniel Levy doesn't want to sell the club. I think he likes his £5 million a year salary, or ranging from 2 million to 7, depending on how well the numbers look, and he likes that. That's his form of a dividend. Because we don't take dividends from the club at the moment, but he doesn't want to give it up. I don't care if he stays. I think he's a brilliant custodian from the business side, and I think it's wonderful that he diversifies the responsibility of revenue generation away from Tottenham fans as much as he does. No other chairman in the Premier League does that, and I think that should be applauded. What I would say is he has to get his hands off the steering wheel when it comes to transfers, because for everyone that you give him a pat on the back for the Kinski deal, the Jed Spence deal, whatever, he's also responsible for screwing up a lot of them. I think his negotiation style sucks. I think he's burnt a lot of bridges that it now means that we don't necessarily get a chance to even compete for certain players that we probably want to. And more importantly, I just feel like with the PSR and the FFP thing, like the ridiculousness of how obviously stupid those rules are. They're just not fit for purpose. The smartest minds in the room are figuring out ways to get around it. At the end of the day, as much as I applaud Daniel Levy for trying to do what he's doing within the rules, I've said this 1,000 times, no one gives you a pat on the back for coming second in the Tour de France by being honest. If the guy who's number one, Lance Armstrong, is juiced up to the eyeballs and there's no drugs test that's going to figure out that he's guilty. And that's the predicament we find ourselves in. And when you have Tavistock and ENIC that have all of these other fingers and all these other pies, I don't know why we can't do some creative accounting as well, where we sell our hotel, or do what Barcelona did, which is the most insane thing. Barcelona have just sold VIP suites in a stadium that isn't even built yet for 100 million euros, I think it was, or 1 billion euros rather, to unknown third-party investment banks. Like, why can't we get creative so that we can supplement the already amazing, genuine, legitimate revenue streams with a few of the tricks of the trade that Todd Bowley et al. Are very capable of doing? We can do it too. And ultimately, I'm at the point now where I'm like, you know what, Daniel, good for you for trying to do it correct, courageous of you. But ultimately, we're never going to be able to compete because the rules aren't going to be fit for purpose. So if you're not prepared to do it, then get out of the way, let someone else do it, because it's about time that Tottenham, were able to see the wood for the trees. And I think that the wood for the trees is very clear. The rules are not ever going to be enforced to the letter that they said that they would. And I just think that the smartest guys are always figuring out loopholes. We can be smart too. Let's do it.
Sean, I cannot thank you enough. I'm sure everybody in the chat has really appreciated your insight into this. Been a really, really interesting chat. We pride ourselves, Adrian, don't we, on some sort of mature content without hyperbole. So let me say thank you very much. We're going to carry on having a little chat, not too long, I hope, Adrian, about tomorrow's some big match taking place at the library. But let's let Sean go. I know you've got to deal with your call and what have you.
Thanks, guys.
Sean, can't thank you enough.
No, loved it. Thanks for letting me talk. I'm sorry I took so long to answer some of your questions.
No, listen, that's what we need people to,
brilliant.
We need people who know what they're talking about, to give us insights into things we don't know.
No, listen, I think you guys are absolutely spot on. All of the questions that you asked and the answers that you guys gave as well. We're all on the same page. We all see what's going on here. And look, up the Tottenham guys on my channel, get over to these boys' channel, smash the sub, get them over 1,000. Come on, guys, spread the love. Thanks very much, boys. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you very soon.
Sure. There's a few of you have clicked off, but those of you who are still here, hopefully listen to what we do the rest of the time. Adrian, I've done a lot of talking, so
I'll jump off, guys. Take care. See you soon. Bye.
Thanks again. Can't thank you enough. And
cheers,
we
boys.
will reciprocate. Get in on your show as well. And
100% in. Reach out. I'll get your number, mate. We'll get a stream going again. Love you guys. Take care, everyone. See you later. Bye.
Yeah. So
right, we'll move on to this, guys. A preview of Arsenal versus Spurs.
Does that mean I can have a glass of wine now?
Of course you can. Have what you want. Our injury woes: 10, Vicario, ankle, Odebert, hamstring, Davies hamstring, VDV hamstring, Romero thigh muscle, you doggy, I think hamstring, VDV, Romero, Richarlison should be fit for tomorrow, be on the bench. Wouldn't surprise me if he starts because they've been holding him back. And Bentancur misses, this might be wrong, a minimum of 6 days because of his injuries. It might be 12, so we might not see him back until either Everton away or maybe later. So we'll move on to the predictive lineup. For me and Ian to go through this. Right, Kingsky, Austin and Foster. I think this is a pretty easy one to pick who's going to start this game.
Yeah, it's going to be Kinsky. I did think last week until Anne said differently that he would start Austin at Tamworth and Kinsky tomorrow night. But it's Kinsky's place, and it's actually Kinsky's shirt to lose after 2 games. I mean, even if Vicario, we had this discussion last week, even if Vicario was back fit, I don't think he'd be playing ahead of Kinsky.
No.
I mean, for all the frustration about signings, and people are right to be frustrated that we haven't, particularly if we've lost out on Muami. But this Kinsky just seems to be the perfect signing for the way we play. I mean, absolutely perfect. We
now got these 3 because we're limited at the fullback position. Spence, Parr and Reguilon. Question whether Reguilon starts a game here. It is away against our North London rivals. I think I would be going for Spence and Porro here myself because I think Spence gives you a bit extra on that left. Porro and Reguilon would have to fight for the right-hand side. I don't know about you. I don't see Reguilon pushing Spence out. He's played well since he's been, brought back into the fold.
I think to be honest, we are. Yeah, I mean, I've heard some people thinking Porro should get dropped because Porro lost the ball a bit on Sunday afternoon and what have you. I don't see it. I think he'll go with Spence and Porro. I'd be astonished if he didn't. Astonished.
Then we move on to centre backs. I think 2 pick themselves here because Dorrington's gone to Edinburgh now, isn't he? I think so. He's going to
Aberdeen.
So we got no choice on these 2. This is where it gets more interesting, midfield up front though, because we've got Saar, Basuma, Madison, Bentancur and Kulusevski. Kulusevski could play in the midfield, could play on the right wing. Who are you going? Which 3 would you pick out of these, Ian?
Where's Bergvall?
Have I not got Bergvall in here? How are we missing him? Hang about, I'm going to hide this and put him in. Sorry about that. Right, hang on.
I'll go as far as to say
that's why, because it's not Bentancur, it should be Bergvall.
Bergvall. Yeah, Bentancur's injured. I mean, Bergvall's going to be the first name on my sheet, I think, tomorrow. I just think he's absolutely absolutely nailed it. I mean, even when he came on Sunday, he played very well. Gave us a little bit of impetus that we didn't have. Yeah, I mean, it's a game I'd like to have started with Bentancur. I think he gives you a little bit of know-how and a little bit of solidity, in the middle. But I'm going with Bergvall, Bissouma, and Sarr in midfield.
Bergvall, Bissouma, and Sarr. Okay.
Yeah. Yourself?
Yeah, I would go Bergvall, Bissouma, and I would go Maddison. Yeah, I would go Maddison.
Do you sometimes think in games that of that intensity, Adrian, Maddison sometimes gets a little bit ahead of him. It's a bit too quick and powerful for him when he likes to dwell on the ball and do his nicey stuff. And a North London derby's maybe not the game for that, particularly a North London derby away from home.
Yeah, I mean, during them 10 games of last season when we won 8 and drew 2, Sarr, Bissouma and Maddison were Angie's pick in those games before we got injury problems and all that. Yeah, and I like Sarr. But it's good that we're getting more options now to be able to pick players. There's more come back. We're going to struggle to pick the team because Andrew will know fitness levels, red zones and things like that. He'll know who needs to be lifted. So I'm picking Maddison for the creativity because you are playing against Arsenal and they are vulnerable at the back of this, which is unusual because last season they weren't, you know. So I would go Bissouma. Look, it can always change things at half time and bring Sarr on. I mean, we don't know what the 3 is going to pick, but I've gone with those 3 because I just think Kulu gives us a bit more depth in midfield, a bit more solidarity, a bit more solidity rather, not solidarity. Yeah. And then we've got, and I've left Kulu again. Here we've got, well, Werner's out now. He's got a hamstring injury. I could hear the cheer from my house. I'm only a mile and a half out. So it's Son, Moore, Solanke, Lancashire. He's not starting, is he? Johnson and Kulusevski. So they're sort of fighting there, really. So you're going Kulu on the wing then?
Well, yeah, and I also think when Kulu plays on the wing, although I prefer him in the centre and midfield, I think what he gives you is he gives you a lot of running, and particularly away from home, and a really high work rate. He also comes back and helps Porro, who's not always the best defensively. And I mean, I think if you watch the last few games, and I know you have because you got a season ticket, is the shape has been a lot more fluid than it has been in well, certainly the earlier months of Angie's reign, and I can see him sort of playing a hybrid right wing come making a fourth midfield player. So absolutely, I see I'm playing Kulu on the right wing, absolutely, and then the centre forward obviously picks himself. Yeah. And Werner would appear to be out injured. I mean, I genuinely hope that's we've got an offer for him, so we can't risk him getting injured under any circumstances. Because that would be really helpful. So I'm going with Son. Obviously, going to start with Son. You've got the option of bringing Mikey Moore on for half an hour or whatever.
And Johnson. When legs are tired on that side, if Kulu is burnt out, you know. So. Yeah.
Got to say hi to our friend Jose. Good evening.
Yeah, hi Jose. And sorry, we couldn't take a lot of your chat comments, guys, because we had 200 in here. So and it gets a bit overwhelming, and we wanted to get as much information out of Sean as we could.
Yeah.
So, what sort of scoreline you going for, Ian?
I think we're going to win. I think it's interesting. This is probably as good a time as you can play Arsenal. I think having got well beaten by Newcastle, they weren't very good against Man United, considering they were playing for an hour with 10 men. I think the sending off was fair comment, but the penalty that they had was utterly ridiculous. Andy Madley, who handled our game against Newcastle, having another fairly ordinary afternoon, but they've lost. You talk about our injury woes, but they haven't got as many injury woes as us. They've got a few, but they've lost Saka, and they've obviously lost a lot of creativity. And then with Jesus, who's now got a cruciate, so that might be the beginning of next season. I would think at the earliest, if he's lucky. And I just feel this is a really good time to be playing them. I think the crowd will get onto them if things aren't going well. So I've gone in Jose's competition. I've gone for 2-1. I'd wish it was 3 or 4 because I'd feel a bit more comfortable. So I think we're going to win this game, and I'm going for 2-1 Tottenham.
I never back us to lose a game, but I mean I've gone for 1-1 on this. Arsenal's form has dipped. The last 3 games they haven't won. I think drawn 1, lost 2. We've kept 2 clean sheets, but it wasn't exactly. That's a flattering 3-0 at Tamworth. All right, I'm glad to be through, even though we got Villa away. But so I'm going for 1-1. There's been quite a few times when I've always predicted when we've been playing well and we've gone to Arsenal and lost, you know. So, and the record there is not great over the years. So, yeah, 1-1 for me. So
I think a draw would be a decent result. Anyone in the chat got any ideas? I don't think we're going to carry on much longer.
No.
We're practically done, and some interesting football going on in England and in Scotland at the moment as well. Could just come on for Celtic. I don't know if we're interested in him or not. So many rumours, but so if anyone's got a comment about the team they expect or the score, always good to hear from you.
And just for those you not going to
discuss. I don't know Matthew, but who's going to score for Arsenal 2 clean sheets in a row? As I say, I think everybody loves Kinski already. Absolutely. Go on, let's deal with this, and then we'll. Yeah,
I'll just show you who we have been linked with, guys. If Miani is going to Juventus, we'll know more. It's obviously he didn't want to come; he wanted to go. So if the player don't want to come to us, I never want them anyway. I mean, these are just links. These are all rumours as well. Tarek Mitchell's out.
Sorry, can you go back? It's my fault. I hit the wrong button. Okay. There you go.
That's fair enough. Tarek Mitchell, left back. I haven't seen too much of him. Other fans like him. Dorgu's the only one I'd really like. I know what I mean, bringing another young player, but I have watched videos of Dorgu. I like the player. He's 20, left back, left wing, right wing. Frattesi is at Inter Milan. They want him gone. See, a lot of these academy, a lot of these clubs in America, in Italy, what am I talking about here? Are skint. Then you've got Douglas Luiz and Fagioli. They're both at Juventus. Rumour is Juve want rid of them because they haven't got money. This gives me one little doubt still about this Muani deal, because I don't think Juventus can finance it. So we never know when they say, "Oh, deal's going to be done. It's done. It's agreed." You know, but it's only agreed.
And we don't know that we've been in for this player. All right, we think we know. We think that Levy went out. But the reality is no one knew anything about Odegaard until it was announced we'd signed him. No one knew we were even talking about Kinski. I'd never heard of him until it found out we'd signed him. You know, Juventus were, a few days ago, Juventus were only interested in a loan with an obligation, not even an option. And now it's been reported in the Italian press, the boy wants to go to Juve and they take a 6-month loan, no obligation, no option. It's all you
contradictions,
just don't know. And everybody who pretends they know don't know. And the people that probably do know, like Ali Gold and 1 or 2 people like that, are probably given, briefings on what they call Privy Council terms, that you're not allowed to, off the record, this is happening. We'll let you know, Ali, when you can print and publish it.
And in Italy, there's been a tenuous link with Thomas Christians and Tomori, who was at Chelsea. So the defender there. The only one interesting thing about these links, apart from Tarek Mitchell, the others are all players, I believe, that are in Italy. So that would smell of Paratici to me. As soon as we get linked with a player in Serie A, I'm thinking Paratici.
Yeah.
We'll move on quickly.
As I say, so much is below is under the radar. Cardozo, we know that the economics.
He's all in France. Muani obviously looks like now he's going to Juve. We'll know tomorrow if the player's made his mind up.
We will know tomorrow, and
they can offer him Champions League football as well, you see. So it is a draw for players. Skriniar,
is he not cup tied in that? I don't know how the rules work.
I don't know. Skriniar would be good. Now this is an interesting one because Ange said he don't want to block the path of Dorrington, Phillips, Vuskovic won't be 18 until the 24th of February. So we can't register him. He's going to have to stay at Westerlo with Alfie Devine until the end of this season, till the summer. But I wouldn't mind Skriniar. And the reason I say that, I'll come on to loans in a minute. The reason I say that is because we don't know what's going to happen with Ben Davies. There's a rumour they're going to give him a year's extension. So he's okay, but I don't think that's progress. given him the year's extension, although he's been a great servant to the club, been there 12 years or something. And we don't, and a more important thing to me here, when we get to the summer, Romero will be in the last 2 years of his contract. Yeah. And we don't know if he's going to sign or not. So if we could get Skriniar in on a loan to buy, because he is 30 or approaching 30 or just 30, then we would have automatic cover if Real Madrid or whatever, or Barcelona or PSG, not PSG, if they could stump up the money for him, you know, and if he decided I want to play for Spurs, we might hopefully won a trophy by them and they want to re-sign. But so I would take Skriniar.
I wonder though. I mean, the club has said, and I mean, I really support this as a strategy, that we are not going to sign a player that's going to block one of these talented youngsters' way into the first team. Yeah. Now, you know, Dorrington is predominantly right-footed, but what I've seen of him plays on the left side of defence.
Yeah, plays left back as well.
Gone to Aberdeen, which is a decent standard. It's sort of I would call it mid-championship to mid-League One level, where Aberdeen are. But it's a decent level, and he'll get to play against some good teams.
He's a baller as well. I mean, and Dorrington, as is Phillips. I mean, Dorrington's 6'3", Phillips is 6'4".
Yeah,
and we paid some money off in Blackburn, and like Vuskovic is 6'3" and a bit as well, I think, as well. And he's scored 6 goals in 20 games for Westerlo. I mean, every level he stepped up, he just looks quality at his level.
But what I'm thinking, Adrian, is that would they give Davis that extra year in order to, while Dorrington gets up to the level? I mean, he's only 19.
I think they will.
It would be to give Davis the extra year until Dorrington is really ready to come in and play first team football.
I think they will, because it's hard to juggle 3 centre backs, let alone 4. You know, and obviously Dragerson has still got to settle in. He's been hit and miss. He's good at some things, not others. His passing really just needs to improve on, but then you keep it simple. Yeah. But then it's because when Romero's out of that back 4, you haven't really got a centre-back that progresses the ball. Whether you love Romero or not, if you're more a VDV fan, you think he's more sexy, I get it. But Romero is the best at progressing the ball and getting us forward up the field. When he isn't there, I think we've missed that progression, right? But others will disagree, which is fair enough.
Sure.
But Gomez was at Man United. He's at Lille with David, isn't he? Another striker we've been linked with, who's been smashing it this season at the end of his contract. Now I've seen how well Graham Bergvall had done, and Gomez is not exactly, he's a midget really on a football field, really. I mean, like, he's got a superb long-range pass on him. Like, I mean, it's not down to us who we get. So I just don't think we need him. I think we're well-stocked in midfield, well-stocked, even though if we're going to get midfielder in, you're talking about probably Basuma being most on the endangered in species list, aren't you, out of all midfielders? And I don't see this happening until summer. We got 16, 17 days left on this transfer window. And said in his presser, we're not getting rid of everybody. We need everybody. Because of the injuries, we do need everybody. So it's a question who comes in, and then it'll get intriguing if they're foreign players, who's going to be left out the Europa League squad? Because we've got the amount there. We're down to 23 players because we haven't got 4 academy trained players that have been with the club 3 years. So we're penalised by 2. So I'm sure we all remember when one fight had to sit out the Europa League squad.
Drew, can you come back to us when you said that here we go? Is that from Fabio? Or Fabrizio, rather, not from Fabio, from Fabrizio, because I think I've seen that. We've all seen that story. I mentioned it earlier that it's no option, no obligation, which was, 3 or 4 days ago. It was a deal breaker for Juventus not to have that. So can you confirm that's from, right? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Drew.
Yeah.
I'll get you on Friday, Drew. I'll get you on Friday. On a Friday.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, if that's what it is, we move on. We only want players. We only want players that are committed to playing for Tottenham Hotspur. I think that's that's the key.
If they don't want to come, and he's gone for Champions League football or what? Fair enough.
Okay, I'm abroad for the next few shows, so Drew, please take my place. You're a more than adequate substitute.
Yes, he is. He's
Substitute
very
comes up and
knowledgeable.
scores the winner. Kind of substitutes we need.
Jonathan David, he's smashing it in France. I've got to be honest, when I looked at videos of the season before, I wasn't that impressed. If the rumours about him do gain gravitas, especially now that looks like we've lost out on Moani, then I will be posting videos of him everywhere from his season and things like that.
I mean, I'll be honest. I'm disappointed we haven't got Moani because I thought he ticked a lot of boxes for the way we play, and his sort of heat map for goals is just where we need goals. But hey, if he doesn't want to come and play for us, we move on. You know, if he doesn't want to go out with me anymore, I'll find another girlfriend.
And like you said, it may all come out later that we'd lost interest in Moani quite early, and we may have been interested. That's different. But when we heard what PSG want, we may have said no. So so that's that. Just to finish with, guys, just to let you know, we like to bring you facts here. Oops, shit, wrong thing. Right, just a little rule thing. Right, in the Premier League transfer. Oh, damn it! What happened there? Why didn't it come up? Right, why isn't it coming up? No.
What are you looking for?
Hang on. It's not bringing up the. Right, okay, I'll read it because for some reason it won't come up. Right,
not that one.
It was the low market.
Which one you're looking for?
The low market rules. For some reason, it won't come up. I don't know.
It's there. I've got it on the ticker anyway. I think you.
Oh you got it on a ticker. Yeah, just for guys that like some of these facts. Premier League clubs are allowed 6 loans. Right, 6 loans are allowed. A maximum of 4 foreign players and a maximum of 2 homegrown players. Or 2 home. Yeah. So I'm not sure if it's homegrown or just 2 home players that have played in this league. Well, that's about it, Aaron. We're going to wrap it up now.
I think, I mean, there you go. There's something from our friend Sean. You know, in fact, Sean, you're obviously in the house, back in the house. It was an absolute pleasure, and your knowledge and
we'll get you
insight
back.
is really useful, and it's actually the kind of content we want. You know, there's plenty of the Levy out hatred channels. We don't need another one of them.
We like mature and sensible fact-based content. You know?
Yeah, Adrian, I'm happy. I'm on a plane to.
Right. Okay. So I'll play you out with this, guys. You'll all remember this.